Imagine this. The strongest walls you face in life aren't out there in the world. They live inside you. They were built long ago, when you were still a child. And here's the haunting part. Even if you've grown, even if you've achieved, even if you've worked hard to change, those invisible walls can still keep you small. Have you ever wondered why, no matter how much progress you make, there's still a hidden voice whispering, "You're not enough. Don't try. Stay where you are." That voice isn't random. It has roots. It comes from the shadow, the part of you that holds everything you've denied, repressed, or pushed away. And most often, those roots were planted in your earliest years. Think back. A child is radiant, curious, wild, full of raw potential. But at some point, the child begins to shrink. Maybe it was a parent's sharp look. Maybe a teacher's laugh. Maybe the sting of rejection on the playground. In those small moments, you learned a survival strategy. Hide the part of yourself that caused pain. Push it into the dark. That's how the shadow is born. The paradox? What you bury never really disappears. Instead, it grows in secret. It shows up in adulthood as hesitation, as self-sabotage, as repeating patterns you swore you'd escape. You might blame circumstances, or other people, or even fate. But what if the real force holding you back is your own unhealed shadow? And here's something unsettling. The shadow doesn't only hold what we call bad anger, envy, selfishness. It also holds your brightest gifts. The talents you were told were too much. The dreams you abandoned because they seemed unrealistic. The voice you silenced to keep the peace. All of that brilliance is still inside you, locked away with the pain. So let me ask you, how much of your life right now is truly yours? And how much is just a survival pattern, echoes from childhood? Pause for a second. Every time you hesitate to speak up, every time you feel guilty for saying no, every time you play small in love, in career, in friendships, maybe it's not the adult you making the choice. Maybe it's the child inside you, still trapped in the shadow, still begging not to be hurt again. But here's the hope. Jung believed that when we face the shadow, when we bring it into the light, we can reclaim those lost parts. Integration doesn't mean destroying the shadow. It means making peace with it. It means taking back the energy you buried. And on this journey we're about to take together, I want you to stay with me until the very end, because the last insight will uncover the one about how the shadow hides in your closest relationships is something Jung considered both dangerous and liberating. If you miss it, you may miss the key to breaking free. So are you ready to step into the dark corridors of your childhood echoes and finally see how the shadow has been keeping you small? Stay with me. What you discover here may change the way you understand yourself forever. If the shadow was born in childhood, why does it still matter now, decades later? Haven't we outgrown those fears, those tiny wounds, those whispered shames? On the surface, maybe, you've built a career. You've created relationships. You've learned how to move through the world. But underneath, in the unconscious, those echoes still shape how you live. Carl Jung taught that what we repress doesn't disappear. It slips underground. It hides in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in sudden bursts of emotion that seem to come from nowhere. Most importantly, it leaks into the choices we make, who we love, what we pursue, how far we allow ourselves to go. That's why shadow work isn't just a luxury for people who enjoy psychology. It's survival work. It's the work of reclaiming the steering wheel of your own life. Think about it. How many times have you caught yourself repeating a pattern you swore you'd never repeat? Staying in relationships that feel too small. Avoiding opportunities even when you know you're capable. Feeling triggered by people who mirror traits you buried in yourself. That's the shadow at play. It doesn't ask for permission. It just acts, quietly shaping your reality. And here's the striking truth. In today's world, shadow work may be more important than ever. Why? Because modern life constantly pressures us to wear masks. Social media rewards the polished, filtered version of yourself. Workplaces demand productivity over authenticity. Even families pressure you to keep up appearances, to be the one who never fails. Under all of that, your shadow grows heavier with everything you don't show. Shadow work means turning inward instead of outward. It's not about chasing another self-help trend or pretending to be positive all the time. It's about asking, what parts of myself have I denied? What emotions have I labeled unacceptable? What gifts have I hidden because I feared judgment? And when you begin to face those questions, something radical happens. You stop living reactively. You stop letting unconscious fears write your story. You begin to integrate. Integration means turning on the light in a dark room of your psyche, not to erase the shadow, but to accept it as part of you. Let me make this real. Imagine two people at work. Both receive criticism from their manager. The first feels crushed, immediately believing they are worthless. They withdraw, maybe even sabotage their own performance. The second feels the sting, but then calmly reflects, learns, and moves forward stronger. What's the difference? It isn't intelligence. It isn't talent. It's integration. The first person's shadow carries the old childhood wound of, I am never enough. So, the feedback reactivates that pain. The second has already done some work to meet that wound, to soothe it, to reclaim their worth. This is why shadow work matters in modern life. Without it, you stay stuck in cycles that don't belong to your adult self at all. They belong to your childhood echoes. With it, you begin to live from wholeness instead of fragments. And here's another layer. Jung believed the shadow isn't only personal. There's also a collective shadow everything, a culture, a community, or even a whole generation refuses to face. Look around and you'll see it. The endless chase for perfection, the glorification of busyness, the way we silence vulnerability while secretly craving it. These aren't just personal struggles. They're collective shadows we all swim in. When you do your own shadow work, you don't just heal yourself. You disrupt those collective patterns. You give permission for others to be real too. A parent who integrates their shadow passes down less unconscious pain. A leader who owns their hidden fears inspires authentic trust. A partner who faces their wounds creates safer intimacy. Shadow work isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. And in a world that constantly pushes you to fracture yourself into pieces, the professional self, the social self, the family self, wholeness is revolutionary. So let me leave you with this question. What is the cost of not facing your shadow? The price is always higher than we think. Lost opportunities, relationships that never reach depth, creativity that stays locked away, confidence that never fully blooms. But when you dare to look into the shadow, when you trace those childhood echoes with courage, the cost transforms into a gift. Freedom. Freedom to step out of the patterns. Freedom to claim the parts of yourself you buried. Freedom to live as more than just an echo of the past. That's why we won't only explore ideas here. We'll step into practices. With every sign of the shadow we uncover, you'll have something simple to try: a reflection, a journaling exercise, a daily action. Because knowing about the shadow is not enough. You have to meet it. You have to walk with it. Now, let's take the first step. Next, I'll share a story, a symbolic metaphor that mirrors the journey of the shadow. You'll see how ancient myth and modern life both whisper the same truth. The treasure you seek is hidden in the place you fear to enter. Are you ready to step into that story? Every culture tells a story about entering the dark. In Greek mythology, Orpheus descends into the underworld. In fairy tales, the hero walks into the forbidden forest. In countless movies, the main character has to step into the cave, unsure if they'll ever return. Joseph Campbell once said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." Jung would nod and add, "That cave is the shadow." Now let's bring this closer to everyday life. Picture a child standing at the top of a basement staircase. The door is open, the air is damp, the steps vanish into blackness. No adult is nearby. The child freezes. Their body stiffens, their mind whispers, "Don't go, it's dangerous." Maybe there's nothing down there but dust and cobwebs. Still, the fear feels real enough to stop them. Fast forward 20 years. The child is now an adult. Yet every time life presents uncertainty, a new relationship, a career risk, a chance to shine, the same fear rises. The basement is still there, only now it's symbolic. The shadow is still there, and the adult still hesitates at the doorway. This is how the shadow works. It creates a mental basement filled with the fears, shames, and rejections you once carried. Then it convinces you not to enter, even though entering is the only way you'll grow. Let me give you a real-life story. Emily looked successful from the outside. She had a steady job, a decent relationship, a comfortable life. But inside, she felt small, as though her voice didn't matter. In meetings, she had sharp ideas, but stayed quiet. When asked for input, she echoed what others had already said. In therapy, Emily remembered being 6 years old, sitting in class. She raised her hand with excitement, eager to answer. Her answer wasn't right. The teacher chuckled, the class laughed, and for Emily it felt like the world collapsed. In that moment, she wrote a rule deep inside. It's safer not to speak. It's safer to stay small. That rule became her shadow. For decades, it replayed silently, tugging at her choices. No one else could see the strings, but they were there. When Emily finally revisited that memory, the old fear surged. But she stayed with it. She wrote about it. She let herself feel the sting, and something shifted. She realized, I'm not 6 anymore. I'm an adult. My voice matters. Slowly, she began speaking up, first in small conversations, then in meetings. Eventually, she presented in front of her company. Every time she spoke, she reclaimed a piece of the power she had buried in the shadows since childhood. That's why myths and stories point us to the same truth. The shadow is the dragon guarding the treasure, the basement hiding your voice, the forest you were told not to enter. And the lesson is simple. The treasure is never outside. It's always hidden in the very place you've avoided. So let's make this personal. Think of a childhood moment when you felt small, shamed, or silenced. Maybe you were told not to cry. Maybe someone laughed at you for being too loud, too different. Close your eyes and revisit it. Ask yourself, what rule did I write that day? What part of me did I bury to feel safe? This kind of work isn't easy. The basement always feels cold at first. But the moment you step inside, the moment you turn on the light, you realize the monsters were never real. They were echoes. And echoes lose their power once you face them. So, as we move forward, hold this image close. The shadow as the cave, the dragon, the basement. It isn't your enemy, it's your invitation. And next, we'll look at 3 of the clearest signs of how the shadow shows up in daily life. You may have mistaken them for just who I am, but in truth, they're echoes of childhood replaying themselves over and over. We've seen how the shadow hides in myths, stories, and childhood memories. But how does it actually show up in your daily life, right here, right now? Let's look at 3 of the clearest signs that the shadow is pulling the strings. And as we explore them, I'll also show you how to start loosening its grip. First, overreacting to small triggers. Have you noticed how a tiny comment can spark a huge reaction? Someone forgets to text back and suddenly you feel abandoned. A coworker gives neutral feedback and you sink into self-doubt. The reaction feels so much bigger than the situation itself. That's the shadow at work. A present moment has touched an old wound. If you grew up feeling invisible, even a harmless oversight can echo like, "See? You don't matter." Try this. The next time you feel that surge, pause and ask yourself, is this about what's happening now, or is this about the past? Write down what memory or feeling it connects to. Naming the echo is the first step toward freedom. Second, projection onto others. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Projection happens when you see in someone else what you've buried in yourself. Maybe you repressed your anger as a child, so now you despise anger in other people. Maybe you buried your ambition because it was called selfish, so now you resent ambitious coworkers. The shadow survives by hiding in plain sight, disguised as someone else's flaw. So notice, Who do you judge most harshly? Then ask, what part of me am I really looking at? This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming qualities you've locked away. Third, playing small to stay safe. This one is painfully common. Playing small means shrinking so you won't be noticed, criticized, or rejected. You hold back ideas. You avoid leadership. You tell yourself you're content with less than what you really want. But here's the truth. Playing small usually isn't laziness. It isn't lack of ambition. It's survival. Maybe standing out as a child brought punishment. Maybe shining too brightly brought envy or rejection. So you wrote the rule. It's safer to hide. Take a moment and ask, in what area of my life am I holding myself back? Work, love, creativity. And whose voice told me it was safer to stay quiet? When you see that the belief isn't truly yours, but a survival strategy from long ago, the shadow's grip begins to loosen. Overreaction, projection, playing small. These are childhood echoes disguised as adult choices. The good news? Once you see them clearly, you can begin to respond differently. But this is only the beginning. The shadow also has subtler ways of showing itself, quieter, slower, almost invisible. And those whispers can hold you back for years. Next, we'll look at 3 more signs. The ones that keep you stuck not with noise, but with silence. We've uncovered the first 3 signs of the shadow: overreaction, projection, and playing small. These are easier to notice once you know what to look for. But the shadow doesn't always reveal itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers, and those whispers can shape your life for years without you even realizing it. Let's look at 3 of those quieter signs. Perfectionism that masks fear. On the surface, perfectionism looks like high standards, discipline, and hard work. But underneath, the shadow is whispering, if you're flawless, no one will reject you. This belief often starts in childhood. Maybe love felt conditional. You were praised when you excelled, but ignored or criticized when you failed. Mistakes weren't safe. So you buried curiosity and play, and replaced them with the pressure to be perfect. But here's the tragedy. Perfectionism doesn't protect you. It imprisons you. Instead of freeing you to create, it chains you to fear. Try this. Ask yourself, what mistake am I most afraid of making right now? Imagine if you actually made it. What would really happen? You'll often realize the catastrophe you fear belongs to the past, not the present. Emotional numbness. Not everyone's shadow shows up as explosions of feeling. For some, it looks like the opposite, a flatness, an inability to feel much at all. If, as a child, your emotions were dismissed with words like, "Don't cry," "Don't be so sensitive," you may have decided to bury them completely. As an adult, this can feel like living in muted tones. You don't fall apart, but you don't feel deeply alive either. You scroll, you work, you smile politely, but something feels missing. That missing piece is often the shadow, holding hostage the emotions you once learned were unsafe. So, when you notice yourself feeling nothing, pause and ask, if I allowed myself to feel, what might be underneath? Even naming the hidden emotion can open the door a little. The inner critic that never rests. One of the shadow's favorite disguises is the critical voice in your head. It tells you you're not enough, not ready, not worthy. On the surface, it can sound like self-discipline. But if you listen closely, you might recognize the voice. Maybe it sounds like a parent, a teacher, or an older sibling. Often, this voice formed as protection. If you criticize yourself first, maybe others won't. If you hold yourself to impossible standards, maybe you'll avoid rejection. But in adulthood, that voice becomes exhausting. It robs you of joy and keeps you from taking risks. Try this. The next time your critic speaks, write down its exact words. Then ask yourself, whose voice does this sound like? Realizing it isn't your true voice, but an echo from the past, weakens its hold. Perfectionism, numbness, the relentless critic. These signs are subtle, but they quietly shape your life. They don't just limit you, they keep you from realizing how much more you could be. But the shadow doesn't stop there. Beneath these patterns lie even deeper ones, hidden rules that can quietly dominate a lifetime unless you bring them into the light. In the next part, we'll uncover those deeper signs, the shadows within the shadow, and see why Jung himself considered them so dangerous and so important to face. So far, we've uncovered 6 signs of the shadow, some loud, some quiet, but Jung reminded us that the shadow has layers. Beneath the surface are deeper patterns, rules so hidden they can shape a lifetime without you realizing it. Let's look at 3 of these deeper signs. Self-sabotage at the edge of success. Have you ever noticed how things seem to fall apart just when they're about to go well? You're close to finishing a big project, and suddenly you procrastinate until the deadline passes. You meet someone you truly like, and then you pull away. You save money, only to spend it recklessly. This isn't clumsiness or bad luck, it's the shadow. Deep down, you may still carry an old belief: I don't deserve more, good things don't last, if I succeed, I'll lose love. So when success approaches, the shadow panics. To stay loyal to that old rule, it sabotages you. Try this. Write down the sentence: if I allowed myself to fully succeed, I fear that, and finish it honestly. What comes out may shock you, but it will also reveal the hidden script that's been steering your life. Attraction to the wrong people. One of Jung's most striking insights was that we're magnetically drawn to people who carry our shadow. That's why so many of us repeat painful relationship patterns. Consciously, you want kindness and stability. Unconsciously, you're drawn to chaos, criticism, or neglect because it feels familiar. If love in childhood was tangled with rejection or inconsistency, your shadow wires you to confuse pain with intimacy. You replay the old story again and again, hoping to finally rewrite the ending. Try this. Think about your last few relationships, romantic or otherwise. What traits hurt you the most? Then ask, where in my childhood did I first experience this pattern? Recognizing the origin helps break the unconscious spell. Fear of your own power. Perhaps the deepest shadow of all isn't fear of failure. It's fear of greatness. As children, many of us were told to tone it down. Don't be too loud, don't be too much, don't outshine others. Slowly, you learned that shining could cost you belonging. So you buried your power in the shadow. As an adult, this shows up as hesitation. You deflect compliments. You minimize your dreams. You avoid leadership roles. Not because you're weak, but because you're afraid of what might happen if you step fully into your strength. Try this. Name one dream or talent you've been minimizing. Then ask yourself, if I truly owned this, who might feel threatened? By naming the fear, you loosen its hold and start reclaiming the power you've hidden away. Self-sabotage, painful attractions, fear of your own power. These are the deepest echoes of childhood. They don't just keep you small, they keep you trapped. But once you recognize them, the spell begins to break. And that leads us to the next step. Awareness is powerful, but transformation requires practice. You have to meet the shadow, not just know about it. In the next part, we'll explore journaling and reflection exercises that help you do exactly that, simple tools to start reclaiming the pieces of yourself you once pushed away. Becoming aware of the shadow is only the first step. Knowledge alone doesn't dissolve childhood echoes. You can't think your way out of patterns that were written in the emotional language of your earliest years. To truly integrate, you need practice ways to give voice to the parts of yourself that have been silent for decades. This is where journaling and reflection become powerful. On the page, the shadow has a chance to speak. You bypass the mask you show to the world, and you meet yourself more honestly than ever before. Let's walk through a few practices you can try. The shadow dialogue. Take a notebook and draw a line down the center of the page. On one side, write me. On the other side, write shadow. Then start a conversation. Ask your shadow a question and let it answer in raw, unfiltered words. Me. Why do you keep holding me back? Shadow. Because I'm afraid you'll be hurt again. Me. Hurt by what? Shadow. By rejection. By being laughed at. By being left alone. Don't censor what comes out. Just write. You may be surprised to discover that the shadow isn't trying to ruin your life. It's been trying to protect you, but with strategies that are outdated. The mirror list. Think of 3 people who trigger you the most. Maybe it's a coworker who brags, a friend who flakes, or a partner who avoids conflict. Write their names down, then ask yourself, what quality in them bothers me most? And where does that quality live in me? For example, my coworker is arrogant. 2. Where have I buried my own confidence? My partner avoids conflict. 2. Where do I avoid facing truth in my own life? This list reveals projections, the qualities you've disowned, but still see reflected in others. Recognizing them helps you bring those parts back into your awareness. Reclaiming the golden shadow. Not all of the shadow is dark. Jung taught that we also bury our brightest gifts. Maybe as a child you were told your imagination was silly, your boldness was rude, your sensitivity was weakness. Those qualities were pushed away with the pain. To reclaim them, think of compliments you've struggled to accept. Maybe someone said, "You're talented," "You're brave," or "You're kind," and you brushed it off. That's your golden shadow speaking. Choose one of those qualities and write a short story, just a page, about a version of yourself who lives that quality fully. Imagine the life you'd have if you stopped shrinking from it. This isn't fantasy. It's rehearsal for integration. The childhood echo. Close your eyes and remember a moment when you felt small or silenced as a child. Picture the scene, the room, the voices, the look on someone's face. Now imagine your adult self walking into that memory. Kneel beside your younger self and say, "You're safe now. Your feelings matter. You don't have to hide anymore." When you open your eyes, write down what that younger self says back to you. This exercise reconnects you to the root of the shadow and begins healing the echo where it started. These practices aren't one-time fixes, they're doorways. Each time you return, you bring another piece of yourself back into the light. Integration isn't about rushing, it's about patience and compassion. And here's the paradox. The more you face your shadow, the less it controls you. The more you sit with your childhood echoes, the less they keep you small. Next, we'll bring this work into the place where the shadow is loudest. Love. Relationships are mirrors, and nothing exposes the hidden parts of us more than intimacy. We'll explore how the shadow plays out in love and why it often pulls us into patterns we can't seem to escape. If there's one place where the shadow shows itself most clearly, it's in love. Relationships are mirrors. They don't just reflect your best qualities, they also reveal the parts of you you've hidden. That's why intimacy can feel both magnetic and terrifying. It awakens the very echoes you've tried to bury. Think about the people you've been drawn to. Have you ever noticed how certain relationships feel strangely familiar? That's not coincidence. Often, we're attracted to people who echo the dynamics of our childhood. If you grew up with distance, you may crave closeness, but end up with partners who pull away. If you grew up with criticism, you may unconsciously choose partners who echo that same judgment. This isn't weakness. It's the shadow trying to replay the old story, hoping for a different ending. The danger is, unless you bring awareness, you repeat the pain instead of rewriting it. Conflict is another stage where the shadow leaps forward. Small issues can carry enormous weight. A late reply, a forgotten errand, a change in tone. Suddenly, the shadow surges. You're not just reacting to your partner, you're reacting to the echo. The inner child says, "See, I'm not important, I'm not loved, I'll be abandoned." That's why arguments in love can feel so much bigger than the issue at hand. They're rarely about dishes or schedules. They're about the shadow knocking at the door, asking to be seen. So the next time tension rises, pause and ask yourself, am I fighting my partner or am I fighting my past? Even this small question can shift the way you respond. Jung also observed that we often fall in love not with the person as they are, but with our projections. At first, this feels intoxicating. You see in your partner the qualities you've buried: their confidence, their tenderness, their creativity. It feels like coming home. But projections eventually fade, and when they do, disappointment often follows. Unless you realize what's happening. If you ask yourself, what do I see in them that I've disowned in myself? Then love becomes an invitation. It invites you to reclaim those hidden parts. Take a moment now. Name 3 qualities you admire most in a partner, past or present. Then ask, Where do these qualities live in me? They may be dormant, but they are yours to reclaim. At its heart, intimacy is shadow work. To be truly close to another human means risking being seen not just your polished self, but also your fears, insecurities, and old wounds. That's why vulnerability feels so dangerous. It reopens childhood echoes of rejection. And yet, intimacy is also where the greatest healing can happen. A partner cannot fix your wounds, but they can hold the mirror steady while you look. Love gives you a chance to face the shadow with compassion. Every relationship eventually reaches a crossroads. Will you repeat the old story, or will you rewrite it? Repeating looks like blame, projection, and cycles of pain. Rewriting looks like pausing, reflecting, and choosing consciously. Love doesn't become easy, but it does become real. The next time you feel triggered, try writing a short letter. Dear Shadow, I know you're trying to protect me by, then finish the thought. Add, but I am safe now because... This simple act calms the frightened child inside and brings the adult you back to the present. Love is one of life's greatest teachers, not because it always brings joy, but because it relentlessly exposes the shadow. It shows you the echoes you've carried since childhood. It challenges you to grow, to integrate, to expand beyond smallness. In the next part, we'll widen the lens. We'll explore how the shadow shows up in work and social life, in offices, friendships, and groups where you're seen. Because the patterns that keep you small in relationships often follow you everywhere else. The shadow doesn't only show itself in love, it follows you into the office, into friendships, into every social circle you join. Work and social life are fertile ground for childhood echoes because they mirror the two places that shaped you most, school and family. At work, just like in school, there are rules, hierarchies, and expectations. In friendships, just like in family, there are dynamics of loyalty, belonging, and conflict. The shadow knows these arenas well, and it quietly convinces you to repeat the same old roles. Think about meetings. Some people speak with ease, while others stay quiet even when they have something valuable to share. If you're the one who stays silent, your shadow may be in the room with you. Maybe raising your hand as a child got you laughed at. Maybe speaking up brought punishment. So you wrote the rule. Stay quiet. Stay safe. Now that same rule whispers every time you're in a professional setting. The cost? Missed opportunities. Being overlooked. Staying small in a career that could be bigger. What if, before your next meeting, you wrote down one idea you want to share? When the moment comes and the shadow whispers, "Don't," you speak anyway. Each time you do, you remind yourself that you're not that child anymore. For others, the shadow appears not in silence, but in hesitation to lead. You may long for more responsibility, yet hold back, saying, "I'm not ready." Deep down, it isn't about readiness. It's about visibility. As a child, standing out may have brought punishment, envy, or rejection. So you learned that being visible is dangerous. Now, as an adult, when leadership opportunities appear, you hide. Ask yourself, if I stepped fully into leadership, what do I fear people would do? The answer will reveal the shadow's hand. And once you see it, you can begin to challenge it. The shadow doesn't stop at work. It sneaks into friendships and social life too. Maybe you always play the role of the helper, never asking for support. Maybe you keep relationships shallow because vulnerability feels unsafe. Often, these patterns come straight from family roles. If you were the peacemaker child, you may still act as the peacemaker with friends, silencing your needs. If you were the responsible one, you may struggle to relax, always scanning the room as if it's your job to hold everything together. Take a moment and ask, what role do I often play in groups? Did I play the same role in my family? Awareness opens the door to choice. The collective shadow shows up strongly in work culture too. Look at hustle culture. On the surface, it glorifies productivity and success. But underneath is exhaustion, fear of worthlessness, and disconnection from rest. When you unconsciously conform to these collective shadows, you betray your own needs. You work past your limits. You suppress your humanity to fit in. Try asking, if I defined success on my own terms, What would it look like? This question alone can shift how you move in the world. When you begin to integrate your shadow, everything changes. At work, you stop shrinking. In leadership, you stop hiding. In friendships, you allow yourself to be real, not just useful, and people notice. They sense your authenticity. They feel your presence. Integrated people change the spaces they enter, not by force, but by simply being whole. Work and social life may seem external, but they're mirrors of your inner world. The more you see your shadow there, the more freedom you gain to choose how you show up. Next, we'll explore a space Jung warned us about, the spiritual path. Because the shadow doesn't vanish when you meditate, pray, or seek higher truths. In fact, spirituality can become one of its favorite hiding places. Unless you see it clearly, you might mistake escape for enlightenment. When people first hear about the shadow, many want to escape it quickly. And one of the easiest escape routes is spirituality. Jung noticed this again and again. Instead of helping us face the shadow, spirituality can sometimes become the perfect mask to hide behind. This is what we now call spiritual bypassing, using spiritual practices, beliefs, or language to avoid dealing with wounds that remain unresolved. On the outside, it looks enlightened. On the inside, it's the same childhood echoes, dressed in new clothes. Think of the person who insists on being positive all the time. They never admit to anger, sadness, or envy. To the world, they seem calm and peaceful. But inside, they're just burying the shadow deeper. Maybe as children, they learned that negative emotions weren't safe. Crying brought scolding, anger brought punishment. So they hid those feelings and replaced them with a constant smile. As adults, the mask of positivity keeps the shadow hidden but not healed. Ask yourself, what emotion do I most avoid showing others? Whatever comes up is often the very place your work begins. Another form of bypassing is the endless chase for higher states. Meditation, prayer, altered states of consciousness. These can all be beautiful practices. But if the goal is to escape pain, then spirituality becomes another way of hiding. Jung believed the path to wholeness isn't about rising above the shadow, but descending into it. The light you seek isn't found by flying over the darkness, but by walking through it. So ask yourself honestly, am I using my spiritual practice to connect with myself or to escape myself? Sometimes the most spiritual act isn't another hour of meditation. It's sitting with the discomfort you've been avoiding. The shadow also sneaks into the way we view spiritual teachers. When someone appears wise or compassionate, it's easy to believe they hold the answers we lack. But often the qualities we admire most in them are the ones we've disowned in ourselves. Jung would say, the traits you worship in your guru are seeds already within you. The danger is forgetting that truth and handing over your power completely. That's how blind devotion grows. Think of a spiritual figure you admire. Write down 3 qualities you see in them. Then ask, how can I grow these qualities within myself? That shift turns projection into integration. And then there's the mask of love and light. It's a beautiful phrase, but it can also become a shield. If you focus only on love and light, you avoid the grief, rage, and fear that also need your attention. Integration isn't about choosing light over dark. It's about holding both the wound and the gift, the child who was hurt and the adult who can now heal. Here's a simple practice. Make 2 lists. One titled Light, one titled Shadow. Under Light, write the qualities you're proud to show. Under Shadow, write the ones you tend to hide. Then ask yourself, how can I let both belong to me? Spirituality can be a lantern in the dark, but only if you bring your shadow along on the journey. If you use it to escape, it becomes another echo keeping you small. But if you use it to face what's inside, it becomes one of the most powerful tools for wholeness. In the next part, we'll zoom out even further and explore Jung's deeper philosophy, the idea of the collective shadow. Because the echoes that keep us small aren't just personal, they're woven into the fabric of society itself. Seeing that bigger picture changes the way you understand not only yourself, but also the world. Up to this point, we've focused on the personal shadow, the wounds, fears, and repressed parts born in childhood. But Jung believed the shadow isn't only individual. There's also something larger, the collective shadow. This is everything. A society, a culture, even a whole generation pushes away and refuses to face. And just like the personal shadow, when it's denied, it doesn't vanish. It leaks out in destructive ways. Think about history. Entire nations have claimed to be pure, civilized, or righteous, while denying their own capacity for cruelty. That hidden darkness didn't disappear. It erupted through prejudice, violence, and war. Jung lived through 2 world wars. He saw how unacknowledged shadows on a collective level could consume millions of lives. When a culture refuses to face its flaws, it projects them outward, branding another group as evil. Now look at today. The collective shadow is still everywhere. Social media is a perfect example. Behind the filters and highlight reels hides a deep insecurity, a quiet despair of not being enough. Or take hustle culture. On the surface, it glorifies productivity and success, but beneath it lies exhaustion, fear of worthlessness, and disconnection from rest. Even families carry collective shadows. Some never speak of conflict. Others don't allow vulnerability. Rules like don't cry, don't question, don't stand out get passed down silently, shaping children long before they understand what's happening. You may ask, why should I care about the collective shadow when I already struggle with my own? Because the two are deeply connected. The personal feeds the collective, and the collective feeds back into the personal. When society shames vulnerability, you hide your emotions. When workplaces glorify burnout, you ignore your body's signals. But when you face your own shadow, you push back against the collective one. Every time you choose authenticity over performance, honesty over silence, compassion over judgment, you weaken the spell. Your healing ripples outward. At the core of Jung's philosophy was one goal: wholeness. He believed every human being carries light and dark, strength and weakness, creation and destruction. Pretending otherwise is dangerous. Integration, embracing both sides, is where true power lies. That's why Jung spoke of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming whole. Not perfect, but whole. It means holding the paradox. I can be kind and still feel anger. I can be strong and still feel fear. I can carry light and still carry shadow. When you let contradictions coexist, you stop living as an echo of childhood. You stop shrinking. You become real. Here's the beautiful part. By facing your shadow, you don't only change your own life, you contribute to something larger. A parent who integrates their shadow passes down less unconscious pain. A leader who owns their fears inspires trust. A partner who faces their wounds creates safer love. Shadow work is personal, but it's also collective. It's how we, little by little, transform the world. So here's a reflection for you. What collective rule or expectation have I been carrying without question? Maybe it's, I must always stay busy. Maybe it's, I must never show weakness. Then ask, what would it look like to live outside that rule? By questioning the collective shadow, you reclaim freedom for yourself and you model freedom for others. In the final part, we'll bring it all together. We'll close with one last reflection and a powerful invitation. Because knowing about the shadow isn't enough. Transformation begins when you step into the dark, reclaim what was lost, and carry it back into the light. Stay with me. These last words may be the most important of all. We've walked together through the echoes of childhood, the whispers of the shadow, and the many ways it shapes your love, your work, your emotions, and even the culture around you. Now, one truth should be clear. The shadow is not your enemy. It isn't a monster waiting to destroy you. It's a wounded part of you, a guardian that once tried to keep the child you were safe. But the very strategies that protected you back then have become the chains that hold you small today. Facing the shadow is how you unlock those chains. It means walking into the cave, stepping into the basement, entering the forest, not to fight, but to meet yourself. Think about everything we've uncovered. You've seen the signs: overreactions, projections, perfectionism, numbness, the inner critic, self-sabotage, painful attractions, fear of your own power. You've seen how the shadow follows you into love, into work, into spirituality, and even into the collective patterns of society. And you've also discovered tools to meet it: dialogues with the shadow, mirror lists, reclaiming the golden shadow, revisiting the child within. These aren't tricks, they're bridges. Each practice helps you reclaim a piece of yourself you once buried. Why does this matter now? Because we live in a world built on masks, a world that rewards performance over authenticity, a world that fears vulnerability but secretly aches for it. To do shadow work is to resist that world, to say, I will not stay small, I will not silence myself, I will not live as an echo. When you integrate your shadow, you stop repeating old patterns. You stop chasing approval. You stop shrinking to fit other people's expectations. Instead, you begin to live as the whole, luminous human you were always meant to be. So here's my invitation. Don't just listen, practice. Choose one exercise we explored and try it tonight. Write to your shadow. Revisit a childhood memory. Notice who triggers you and ask why. Stay with the discomfort, because the breakthrough you seek is always on the other side of what you'd rather avoid. And remember Jung's words: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The darkness isn't here to harm you, it's here to be reclaimed. If something inside you stirred during this journey, hold on to it. That stirring is your deeper self, the part of you that knows it's time to stop playing small. Now you have a choice. You can go back to life as usual, letting echoes dictate your path. Or you can step forward, into the work of integration, reclaiming every part of yourself you once left behind. If you choose this second path, you won't only change your life, you'll change the lives of everyone around you. Because integrated people ripple wholeness into the world. They inspire others to put down their masks. They show that it's possible to live whole. The shadow may have kept you small in the past, but now you know the truth. Inside the shadow is your power. Inside the shadow is your light. Inside the shadow is the freedom to live fully, as the person you were always meant to be. Stay with this work. Keep walking. Your future self is waiting.